Right, Stephen, you can still hear us?
I can still hear you. I can't see the screen though.
Oh, you mean I should share the screen as well?
That would be lame.
Go. And why? People will be able to see everything in the stairs. Always great when that happens. Alright, so you can see our screen, Stephen?
Looks good.
Alright. And it seems like we actually are streaming correctly this time, and we even have audio. If I didn't screw that one up. Alright. So, Kel, any preferences in which order we...
Yes, please. We have one thing that is very minor, so it's 23879. Which one is that? The third from the bottom, I believe. Yes. Support casting read-only memory to memory T. So we already had 2 iterations, and Jan, 3 weeks ago, you guys changed the API name, and Jan had comments that he would like to change it even more. So let's just review his version. You have to go to the bottom of the issue, because we don't have the API at the top. And I like this, like force, yes, over there. If you go like 2 free ups, you will see what you last time approved. It was the MemoryMarshal and try_get_array and as memory of T. It is actually slightly different from what Jan proposes over there, which is interesting. So Stephen, you commented on that one. The get reference is already existing API, because that doesn't seem to be part of this API proposal directly.
There's already the existing dangerous get pinnable reference on Span. The discussion here is to move it to MemoryMarshal, and then once it's there, remove the dangerous pinnable part of the name.
So you should probably bundle
So, but that doesn't allow me to get the array, right?
That doesn't give you a array, that gives you a ref.
So, what if I need an array? Then we don't know I need that? Or
You can't array from Span. There's no way.
Sorry, like, is Jan proposing that we get rid of these APIs in favor of the other ones? Or is he proposing that we have both of them?
No, we're talking about moving all the quote-unquote dangerous APIs to MemoryMarshal.
So it's additional on top of that, right?
We would have both try_get_array instead of dangerous try_get_array, and get reference instead of dangerous get pinnable reference.
Okay, since I'm really bad at picturing, let me just combine them. So we have this.
I'm just editing that on the top. So
This. And that would mean we would have I don't know whether you can. I just tried that.
You may.
if you refresh the top, I just updated it. Stephen, is that correct?
Why did you do that? I just did that. Damn it.
Oh, come on. Nobody's gonna be able to see us on the video.
A little bit sharp.
Okay.
Like, no, this is too much of a sin.
Nice.
Yeah,
There may be some other issues where we talk about other methods, but I believe that's effectively what we're talking about. It's possible the get reference for ReadOnlySpan would actually return a read-only. I'm not sure what we decided there.
Wasn't that the thing that you proposed originally, that we can basically cast it away?
There's another function, unsafe.asRef, for casting away the read-onlyness of a ref. But I think presumably the idea would be when you get the reference out of a read-only span, get a ref read-only. But you have a lot of here.
There's no way in C# I can cast away the read-onlyness when I just have a ref of t, right?
Not in the language itself, but with the unsafe.asRef function.
Oh, I see. So like we didn't add the. So we basically, I think originally we had the discussion of adding an unsafe that basically does it for span of t to read-only, from read-only span of t to span of t. Is the idea we would get rid of that in favor of basically getting the ref t and then using the unsafe function to get read-only ref of t and then basically use the unsafe function to get a ref of t.
Quick interruption. Is anyone joined to the meeting? Except Stephen over here in the room. People are getting 2 microphones pick up from here. So
I'm not.
Sorry for interruption.
Nope, it's not me. I mean, I am obviously connected with the mic, but
yeah, it sounds fine to me. I'm sort of unclear with this. This issue has morphed over time from one thing to another. I'm sort of unclear what it is we're reviewing and approving now.
So should we separate Jan's comment into a separate issue? Would that help?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's sort of the uber point that emerged as part of this or prior to this that we should have this MemoryMarshal class, and we agreed to that, and we already have it, and it's checked in. And some of these members, I believe, are even already checked in, although I have to go check. And then it's a question of what gets moved there from APIs we already have. So do we move the dangerous get pinnable references, like take them off the span types and put them onto MemoryMarshal, and then what does their name become? Do we remove dangerous try get array from read-only memory and put it onto MemoryMarshal, and what does its name become? We should probably take stock of where we currently are, what we've already approved, and probably have a new issue that covers that.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I can edit that. Basically take it offline from that discussion.
And that as memory one is already checked in.
Is it?
Yep.
Tim Seward was working on that, right?
No, I checked it in.
Oh, okay. So we should resolve all. It's just the as memory and not the try get array.
Well, so I mean, like this issue has snowballed. So it initially was just about as memory, and we agreed to add that, but then other things started getting tacked on.
I see.
So we need to figure out what's actually to be reviewed, review that, and then move forward.
Okay.
So, but we don't have any, like, on unsafe, do we have any APIs that are dealing with spans? I don't think we do, right?
I don't believe so. I think it's basically all ref based. I think it's compiler services.
Actually zoom out so we have a chance of seeing what's going on. Yes. I see, and then I guess this is the one, right? I don't think we have like a read-only casting away function here, do we?
That's what that is. I don't think it's being rendered correctly.
Oh, you're saying this is read-only ref t? Yeah, I guess that makes sense, otherwise the function would not make much sense at all. Alright, so then, let's bug in the CCI renderer that we have. So what should we do here then? Should we make get reference return a ref only t? Sorry, read only ref? Seems more logical.
We're already in the process of doing that for ReadOnlySpan's indexer. So I would assume we would do the same thing here. I don't know if there's a good reason not to. I believe we'd have to check with Vladimir. I believe there's already support now in C# for getting the address of a ref read only. So the pinning argument or the difficulty with pinning goes away. So I would assume it would be ref read only, but we should double check with Jan and Vladimir.
So how is this function different from basically doing span index 0?
This works if the span is empty. But by works, I mean you get a pointer or a ref you better not use.
Oh, I see. So I see. Okay,
that's why.
Yep, we did.
Very briefly.
Hey, Steven.
Hey.
You just cut off. I don't know what happened.
He paused again.
He said something interesting.
That's why it's considered dangerous, because you can get the ref to an empty one.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, because you want to edit this then to just make it read-only ref and see whether people complain? Do you want to make this one here read-only ref?
I can. I'm actually creating a new issue. Removed from that one. You just not refreshed. That's all. So what's the original get reference? Do we have that? Do we have it at all?
God damn it!
Where's the MemoryMarshal? Because Jan is suggesting that we rename that name.
So the current name of what?
Well, Jan suggested to, if you go down, right? Now we scoped it to the original thing, so this is done. And Jan's proposal basically saying we should rename as well the get reference. I don't see the get reference existing at all right now.
That's because he's suggesting renaming it to get reference. It's currently called DangerousGetPinnableReference.
I see.
And the pinnable thing goes away because you no longer need to pin. Is that it?
Well, it's also not specific to pinning.
I see. Right then.
Do you know where the Stephen? Oh, that's me. Whenever I ask question.
So you can ask again.
Where does the dangerous get pinnable reference live right now? Do you know that? I can't find it.
There are instance methods on span and ReadOnlySpan.
Span, okay. Okay. So move to.
So I guess you want to add them here as deleted.
MemoryMarshal. All right, issue created. 25.4.12. 4.12.
Die.
The one that takes a span should not return a read-only ref.
Yes, the second one should not be read-only.
Oh, sorry. Go and edit that.
And then as part of this, we would, remove the dangerous get pinnable reference methods that are currently on span and ReadOnlySpan.
Yeah.
I'm also not sure about the in. Is that something Jan had included?
Yes, I didn't edit anything else.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
I just added the read-only and incorrectly.
What does the in even do there?
So in is basically read-only ref, right? On the parameter, is that it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just not clear why that's needed, but he would know.
Can ask.
I guess it's the equivalent of an instance method.
Does it make any difference, performance-wise? I mean, you don't copy the struct, right? But I'm going to add them, remove the other ones.
To removing those two? Yeah. Or you can mention it in the commands. That's gonna be just easier. You know, let's not forget to remove the. I think this is up for grabs as well.
Just have the up for grabs. These are difficult because there are a lot of dependencies on these methods. So removing it requires a careful dance of doing things in core lib and core fx and not breaking things up stack.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Let's remove the up for grabs. I was thinking like, you know, either Ben Adams or Tim Seward might jump on that, but you know, they pretty much know how to do that stuff.
It's possible. It's just, I mean, every time Austin does one of these, I think it takes a year off his life.
Okay, fair enough. Alright, let's take on a short one, if you're done with this one.
I thought this was the short one.
Yeah, I thought as well. 24694, that's the exclude from code coverage attribute. Yep.
I didn't realize we passed Jean Valjean's number.
Hopefully this one is easy. Basically making the attribute applicable as well to assemblies, not only to whatever they had before.
Yeah, I don't know why we wouldn't do this.
Yeah, I have no concerns. The only thing I wanted to point out is that like this means nothing unless the profiler actually honors it, right? Like that's.
Yep. And there's a comment actually that open cover already will immediately work because
and I mean, like they already said they would do it too, so yeah, I have no problems with that. Right, next.
Okay, one more easier-ish. 25094, that's the String.Contains car. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting that you see the lists.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep, I think I had code in my code base as well until I realized this is a bad idea.
Really?
Yeah, that's dumb.
Okay.
Like that is. Anything is why there's so many APIs? Oh, because they already exist, so they should not be in here at all.
I assume they're just trying to show that they're making char overloads where we currently have string ones.
Yeah.
So what
That's the consistency kind of.
This one and this one is the same, right?
No,
Oh,
it's
index
index
output.
output.
Yeah. Yeah, seems good as proposed. I think at some point I made this comment and said string will not be touched that much. Seems like every single time you do the APIs, there's another overload popping up for string. Alright, next one.
UnixDomainSocket. Bottom one.
This one, yeah. I think this one we kind of close on, no?
It's not.
Over email, I think.
Yeah, there was some discussion. That's true.
The only open issue was around, there were two open issues. One was around whether it should be sealed or not, and the other was should there be a public string property returning the path. And where the PR currently stands is exactly as it shows up here, sealed and no property.
So for the sealing, I think this is something where I somewhat disagree with Christoph, but I can see Christoph's argument from the point of view that it's a guideline we have used for the last 15 years, and there's not necessarily a reason to change it, but pretty much in my entire code bases, if you go on GitHub, you will see that almost all my types are always sealed, because my general stance is that types have to be designed to be extensible, and I find it always super weird if people derive from my types just to add a few properties, which is really what it's for. I mean, like, extension methods get you pretty far without having you're having to extend the types. But it's really about state you want to attach to that. But given that in half the time you don't own the creation path, you don't get to choose the type, so it doesn't work anyway. And the other half, I just find it weird that I have to deal with customers that potentially derive from my types that I didn't design for being derived from. In this one though, like, I don't know, like, what would the scenario be for deriving from that type? It seems a bit weird.
I honestly can't think of a single one.
I mean, you could also argue if there's no scenario, like, you could also just not have it sealed, but, I couldn't care less, honestly. Like,
for absolutely any type, you can always have the weird person who wants to override the constructor to grab a stack trace asking where this came from, but since they're going to be the ones calling their own constructor, it's never going to be relevant. But I think that I think that our guidelines should be sealed unless we have a reason to be open. Personally,
yeah, I think that's a different discussion. I mean,
right. Well, I mean, we can remove sealed. We can't add it later.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I can go either way. Like the other questions regarding the property, what's the reason not to have it?
It's generally useless. So there are basically two ways that you use this. You pass it either to bind. You construct a new one and you pass it to bind, or you construct a new one and you pass it to connect. I'm not aware of any scenario for accessing it. That said, I don't see a downside to it other than it's an extra member that, maybe it would cause a problem in the future. I have no idea. But maybe I'm too conservative in this regard, but I always err on the side of not exposing something unless we find a use for it.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, as I said before, like I'm always the person that likes symmetry. Like if I can pass in the value, it seems somewhat logical to be able to get it out of it as well. Because constructor arguments are usually meant to be, stored somewhere. They're usually not like used and then forgotten immediately. If the path is never stored today, I can see the argument being made for there's no point in exposing the property because it would just require us to store it.
No, we do need to store it, so
if we already have to store it, then I don't see a downside of exposing it. Like, it just seems natural. Is it fair to say that the scenario basically is you instantiate this type very locally, and then you immediately forget it anyways because you only basically tell it to use a path for a socket, right? Which you can only do on Unix.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, again, like I could go either way. It just seems odd.
I don't have any. I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't add it, but I have no problems. Like, I don't think it'll cause any problems. So if we're doing it, if symmetry is important, like, that's fine. Or if, somehow, I don't know, looking at it in the debugger, or the debugger would see the private field. So, Whatever's fine.
I'll leave it as it is. Not sure if the symmetry is so strong argument.
Yeah, it's just usually when in doubt I follow it. But yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm fine with as it is proposed right now. Given that nobody seems to have super strong pushback, I will just unblock the rows. Well, they saw that they are blocked by that because they have to do it.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And Steven is gone again. Yep. So I just said that I will just mark it as approved because it seems we're blocking rows and it doesn't seem like, the argument is super strong either way.
We can always add the field later.
Always. And fuck it.
So the green light's flashing, which means you're dropping and reconnecting.
Actually, maybe
some kind of disco.
Let me actually unplug my mouse for now. Maybe it's mouse that interferes with the table. Because today is like way worse than usual. Alright, so then...
You approve? Okay, so the scalar is in theory next, or we could do the TryFormat as well.
Seems to be more in line with what they just looked
at.
So here's the summary. We've added a whole bunch of TryFormat methods that write to a span instead of returning a string. Basically on a whole bunch of primitive types and big integer and whatnot. Parameter, so you can pass in, D or G63 or whatever. Right now, that format parameter is a string, and we did that simply because we, who would generate a custom format parameter dynamically and pass that in? Apparently, we do it. In like string.format, for example, or string builders.append format, we parse out of the format string the substring that represents the format parameter on a whole, and then we pass that to the format. So if we could today to do that, you have to do a substring. If we allowed these TryFormat methods to instead take a read-only span of char, you could just do a slice without allocating and pass that in. There's another case I've seen where you dynamically, like big integer does this, it dynamically generates a format based on the number of digits, like a digits argument. And so it'll append D with that, formatted digit number. If we allowed you to do read-only span, we could just format that to the stack and then pass that in as the format. So there are cases for it. And the question is, do we care? And if we care, do we want to change the existing ones? Do we want to add additional overloads? Part of the issue is today, I don't know if we have a good reason for this or not, there's no implicit conversion from string to span, or from string to read-only span. And because of that, if we just change the existing overloads to take a read-only span, to call it with a string, you'd have to tack on like dot as read-only span, which makes it a little bit more difficult to use.
Is out.
So
Stephen is out.
Yeah, I know.
Hello again.
Hi. If we had an implicit cast from string to read-only span, downside to changing all of the TryFormats to take a read-only span of char instead of a string.
Why?
So at the bottom of my post, I list sort of the 4 options I'm aware of for how we could proceed here.
Why haven't we added that implicit cast?
I have no idea.
You should.
It feels to me that string is read-only span of char in the same way that array is every magical interface that it is.
I agree. I don't know if there's a reason other than this was all prototyped outside of .NET Core, and the only way you could add such an implicit cast would be on string itself, because you can't add an implicit cast for a specific generic specialization.
Yeah. So
that generic type.
To me, based off having used the stuff, like I know, like you can pass an array into a read-only span, or a byte. Well, I guess of T, and it's very natural and lets you drop in these better replacements without needing to make the overload. So I think that we should probably whether or not it's for this, add the implicit conversion from string to read-only span of char, unless Jan wants to give a reason why not. And then I would then say that we should just change these and not make them be overloads.
I agree. So if you scroll down a little bit, Emo.
So where did we land with our conversation on this? We're basically saying read-only span of char is effectively our span representation for strings. Is that where we landed?
Yeah.
Right. So Jeremy, what you just described is number 3.
Yeah.
And that's my ideal as well. Unless there's a good reason I'm unaware of that we should not have such an implicit cast.
The second best would be probably number 2, in my opinion, in case we cannot, there's some reason unknown. Because these are already kind of advanced functions where you really want to no allocate, so like having extra colons things is not that. It's not convenient, I agree.
Well, it's also inconsistent with arrays.
Oh my goodness.
And like for arrays, they say already went with implicit conversion.
Hmm?
With arrays, you already went with implicit conversion, so it seems like it's a natural extension of that. The only thing I could imagine is that if we were to do something similar to what Java has done with their encoding for strings, I could imagine a world where we said that we have certain strings that are not UTF-8, but like whatever encoding they're using. I forgot what the name is. Some Western Latin thingy, which is effectively single byte for most of the term. Then read-only span of char might be inconvenient. We may have another overload that takes read-only span of something else, maybe byte. And then if you have both of them, you're screwed. Now you have to do. But then you could also argue that we can make an explicit cast for the advanced one, and then you can at least do a normal cast or a .as whatever.
Yeah, that's
given that those things are somewhat more opportunistic and we don't know where we're landing, I would not be opposed just doing 3 for now.
I think I talked with Levi actually about the span of char and read-only span of char regarding UTF-8 as well. Do you know how much that's gonna stumble up on their feet over there?
Well, I mean, UTF-8 will be if we really do UTF-8 and not the Latin thing that Java has done, then I think there will be. I don't think we will have a way you can construct a string object that is UTF-8 because we know that breaks too much shit. So we would probably have something like either a separate type, like UTF-8 string, or we would have some sort of methods that, given a normal string, would give you a read-only span of byte or something that you just know is UTF-8. So either way, I don't think there will be a downside to having an implicit conversion from a string object. I think the string object argument is only when we would have a feature where the instance of the string could be UTF-16 or something else, in which case this implicit cast may be inconvenient.
Right, because what Apple did in Core Foundation, their string, it can know that it's an ASCII string or a UTF-8 string or a UTF-16 string, and the only time that it's ever relevant is if you ask it, can I see your bytes? And then you have to tell it, I believe your encoding is this encoding. And if you're right, then it will give you the bytes, and if you're wrong, it will not. And so it's the sort of test.
Basically, hidden byte array with interpretations.
Yeah, I mean, I believe you can ask it what its encoding is. So you can say, hey, string, give me your byte array with the give me your encoding, and it'll be like, okay. So if we were going to do something like that with our string for UTF-8 or do even UTF-32 strings, because in some cultures they're more efficient. Maybe. So if we were going to make string have multi-encoding, then the implicit to read-only span of char could be expensive, but to char array would also be more expensive than it currently is. So I don't know how much we would be willing to change the intrinsic of what string means. So this, I guess, just comes down to if we don't think that we'll ever change string off of UTF-16LE, then it's fine. And if we think that there's some ambiguity, then we maybe shouldn't add the implicit conversion. But either way, I agree with Carol's assessment that number 2 is probably better than number 1. So just on the things that are outing to a span, or things that are writing to a span, we take the format as a read-only span of char, and then if we get feedback that this is too much of a pain in the butt to use, we can add the overloads later.
Okay, then I suggest if we're all agreed on that we agree on that as far as this issue is concerned, and then I can open a separate issue for the implicit cast on string.
Sounds good.
Why? Why don't we bundle it into this one?
In case we want to find anything out from and Jan and
I see. I would put it actually in this context, maybe even basically do bundle of those things, and either the implicit cast is gonna happen or not.
Doesn't number 2 prevent us from ever adding an implicit conversion?
No. Why?
Isn't there you have 2 overloads?
No, number 2 is not about 2 overloads.
So if we added an overload, the compiler would prefer the exact string match over the implicit conversion to read-only span of char.
Number 2 is about use string, and you explicitly call the as read-only span.
Oh, there is technically one difference.
Because
do we care about? Do we have any format methods that ever care about the null format versus the empty format?
So say again.
An empty string and null string.
Yeah. I'm when you switch from string to read-only span of char, you
lose that. Yeah.
You lose the ability to distinguish between null and empty. Meaning that if before empty meant something, if null meant do the default thing and empty meant do something else, then
make it nullable.
You can.
You don't want to.
I'm just saying that would be the only reason to not.
No, it's not actually true, right? I mean, if you have a default instance of span, that is effectively different from an empty span. I mean, you can ask the thing.
But let's not go there. We're bike-shedding,
I'm just saying that distinction exists in spans. You can differentiate between a null pointer and a pointer to an empty buffer. Those are different things. Same with an empty string being different from null.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, we can propose number 2 and see where it leads us, right? It's certainly the more conservative choice.
Yeah, it's the conservative. Yeah. So do we still want to create a separate issue?
That's why Stephen was assigned.
Yeah, I mean, given the knowledge that I have, I think that the implicit conversion from string to read-only span of char is good. I just worry that Jan or Levi or Christoph may know things that I don't know about why that could be a bad idea in this or an anticipated release.
So Stephen, the only question I have is I'm somewhat confused that we have format strings to begin with. Didn't Christoph do this weird struct, I forgot what the name is, which basically represents a simple format string that is just basically a number plus a character?
Yeah, but it doesn't allow for custom formats.
Yeah, but he was asserting that we wouldn't do this for the efficient one anyway because it's super slow.
I don't think that's a valid argument for these. Maybe it's fine for the UTF-8 ones for those scenarios, but I mean, these TryFormat methods are primarily about avoiding a string allocation. The cost of doing the formatting, if it's the same between the two string and the TryFormat, it's really just, is there the string allocation or not? I don't know why custom format impacts that.
I mean, do any of these types have formats that aren't just a single letter and a value separator?
The datetime?
Oh, I missed datetime when looking at the list.
For sure.
Datetimes definitely do. But the rest
all,
just
like,
does.
all of them do. You can say like in string.format, you could have a hole that was 0, and then like pound dash pound dash pound.
Oh, right, because we can turn numbers into currency
Right.
and other stuff. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, you can.
I forgot that numbers had custom formatting as well.
Yeah, like it's everywhere.
We discussed that last time when we did the try format, if we should have the char overloads, right? And we decided against that.
So I think that seems reasonable then. And then the TryFormat would basically, so the TryFormat one is already specific for the new types, right? So they're all net new APIs. And basically, number 2 would be there's no string-based version of that. Is that fair?
Correct.
So we will not ship, I'm not sure exactly what you just said, but I think what you said is we will not ship a string format-based version of those, and that's correct.
No, I mean the opposite. Like, I mean, you're basically saying that we add new TryFormat APIs, and those would never take a string-based format, and they would always take a ReadOnlySpan of char string. And then if later on we would add the implicit conversion from string to ReadOnlySpan of char, then you just, callers just don't have to use the as ReadOnlySpan anymore. They can just pass it in directly.
Right. Yep. And then if we wanted to, we can add, if we want to move that standard format thing down to core lib, we could add overloads that took a standard format as well.
I see. Yep. It works for me. All right. We seem to...
All right, so if we're saying 2 on this one, do you want to open the issue for Jan and Christoph to argue about the implicit conversion, Steve?
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
Let's link them.
Thank you.
Again. Man.
Required implicit conversion.
As we've learned, Emo's laptop drops the thing if he's typing, or if he's not typing, or if he's breathing.
Use his mouth. Yeah.
So if he's typing or if he's not typing.
From, I think, in the future, but we were learning actually with number 3 and number 2 as backup, right? Because number 3 is number 2 plus the implicit cast.
That's what I'm saying. I think we said we only do number 2.
Yeah, we're doing number 2.
Oh, over here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're hoping that for the release we've done number 3, but this API proposal is
Sorry, I didn't read it.
just do number 2.
But in future,
The people who can answer whether or not it's a bad idea aren't in the room.
That was something.
Yep.
All right. All right, you did. That was.
And we have the one from Stephen filed.
All right. Then I think this one is done. Alright, let's give all our friends for the ItemRef thing a few minutes to show up, and then we can discuss the scalar one instead. Steven, you want to hop on the other call?
Say that again?
you want to hop on the other call for the ItemRef thing?
Oh, sure.
All right.
What would you do if you said no?
In a few seconds, it was going to drop him anyway.
Exactly.
Doesn't really matter.
So the implicit cast, I'm gonna experts, but from we don't need to wait for yet another round of approval on our side, I assume.
Oh, I mean, like the API shape, is defined by the language. We either add the implicit conversion or we don't. So.
Yeah, but I mean, in this room, we agree that it would be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. On the wrong call?
What is there?
I don't trust.
Are you still streaming the same stuff?
There he is. Can you hear us, Stephen?
I can hear, I can see.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
Lost.
Alright, so...
What are the sounds?
People pinging your line.
Okay.
I probably should mark myself as...
Don't you dare. Oh, we have Vladimir, great.
Just go to the other one. Well, let's assume the answer is no. Let's take it from there.
All right, we're done.
Let's see.
It's where it cannot be possibly be done the other way, and then spend an hour discussing other ways.
Ah, you say that.
That's what you came here for?
So there are two parts. One is basically agreeing to the name of the function, because such functions will be introduced, you want it or not. It's just, let's agree on the command pattern. And the second, let's then apply that in various places. In particular, we want that in immutable array, immutable list, array builder in particular, because you can see so much annoying code where you have a stack of T in Roslyn, and you want to change what you have on the top. So you have to push that thing, change it, pop it, change it, and push it back. If you can get a reference to the top, you could just change it in place.
Right.
But it's not possible because it's array builder underneath, and that has by val indexer. So if we had a by ref accessor, we could do it. It's just an example.
No, I completely get the scenario. I mean, to me, that's just unfortunate we can't change the indexers.
Yeah, the indexer are already there, and kind of
Let's be brave. Let's change them.
Yeah.
So even if we would change it from T to read-only ref T, that's still a breaking change because it changed over resolution, right?
It's a binary break, definitely.
Oh yeah, that's true too.
There are languages who can't even use it, like VB or F# or anything actually like older than C# 7.2.
That's an interesting question. So what happens in general with like ref T and read-only ref T? So VB doesn't support it at all?
VB supports ref T. It doesn't support read-only ref T for now.
I see.
And it doesn't support them specifically because we modrec it. It doesn't know about read-only at all, but we also poison the signature. So it's we intentionally make it not consumable from VB because you should be either smart and know how to use it, or you should not be able to use it.
We only make it modrec on return, so on ins we make it mod up, I suppose. Or, like, how do we mark it? Like an in argument, which is basically
the in argument is kinda a bit funky. If it's just a standalone method, like static method or instance method of a structure, we don't mark in parameters at all because nothing is wrong. You could treat them as by ref. It's a guarantee which Kali provides. So you could ignore extra guarantees. Yes. But we do modrec them if it's virtual or a delegate method, or if it's an extensibility point, then we mark it because otherwise you can override it. So
makes sense.
But this is trivial indexer, which is.
So I think this scenario makes complete sense to me. I'm not super gung-ho on the proposed name, but I also don't have any alternative.
Yeah, I initially suggested a different name, but discussion kind of moved towards this one. Initially they liked my name, but then kind of this one looked more attractive.
So item.
They like the ref thing because it ItemRef still doesn't tell you if it's by ref. ItemRef sort of hints that it is a reference.
Yep.
Whether that's important or not, well, that's an extra information. I think they read the same.
Well, the problem with ref is that it's effectively a keyword, right? I think you should avoid like codifying keywords in APIs because it's very language specific, right? People probably call it reference or something, right? Or like whatever they call it on returns. I would go with a name that is a bit more agnostic to how the language expresses it. You could call it item reference. It's still somewhat, agnostic. It just seems very long.
Yes, over here I don't see the ref as encoding of the ref keyword, much more as a shortcut for the reference.
Which is what we don't do. We don't abbreviate names, right?
No.
So that's right. Either it is already a terminology or you just say, spell it out. But item reference seem unnecessary long. That's why I liked item at, because it kind of implies a locality. But I agree with you that it's not necessarily the best way.
I would like element at, but element at is taken. It's like completely spoiled by the link. So item add is good enough that nobody uses it. It's kind of hard.
But for normal people, like if you look at element at item at, what the heck is the difference, right? That it's going to be confusing from their perspective. Unless I know the deep, what's happening behind and stuff. It's like why? How should I choose which one to use or whatever?
To me, it's once the name is introduced, people will just learn it to mean a particular thing.
Well, there are two types of people, right? People who know have no idea, have not been exposed to this, to that level of depth in C# and things like what are the differences. And if it pops at them, they should at least find out, those two things are slightly different.
It is hard for me to count ItemRef because I'm just mildly preferring it more than ItemAdd, because to me, like, I mean, as long as I want this method to exist, I don't care about the name.
We're discussing just the name, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this is not a discussion on whether or not we should add this any given type. It's a discussion on when we decide that to have the throwdown over list of T or anything else. The throwdown is, we can take bike shedding out of the equation. It's like if we do it, this is how we're going to do it.
That's what we're doing right now.
Now we are bike shedding.
Yeah. Let's just.
I think nobody.
We're deciding on the name. We're deciding on the name.
Yeah, bike shedding.
So that in this room, not quite. Maybe for you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think nobody has any problems with this scenario. I think it is kind of clear that we need to have another way to get an actual ref_t back, and the only way we can do it is by adding a method. So I don't think there's any other even possible alternative to that design. Now the question is just how will we expose it.
Yeah.
So people just played with it. When you read it, ItemAdd looks like fine, but when you are assigning to it or passing by reference, this is where I think they started moving towards ItemRef. Like, what am I passing by reference? Why is it even possible? To me, that's because it's a variable. You can pass it by anything, but they kind of think it should save it.
I think what we could potentially do is just literally sending an email and saying, here's a few names you can think of, and then just try to close it over email. That may be better than doing it.
That kind of happened in that discussion, but we can try over email. In the discussion, like 7 to 1, I think, it was ItemRef.
So do you think that we have so many different opinions over here, or that we have to do it over email? We cannot close on it here?
The problem is I really want people like Christoph to have an opinion on that.
Okay.
He's not here.
Fair enough.
I think he voted for F. There should be 2 of them side by side. Like, take it back. Scroll a little.
It's the only occurrence of his name. So.
Yeah, but he might have just voted, so you need to hover over the votes.
There is a place where I just posted 2 of them side by side, and people.
Down, over here.
Yeah.
ItemRef, ItemAdd. So nobody voted for ItemRef. Christoph didn't vote.
Christoph isn't there.
Yeah. So the only.
So I talked to him briefly offline. Like, I mean, he didn't even hear about the proposal apparently. So I explained the proposal to him. He was insisting that arrays do not return ref_t. Then I showed him in the debugger that actually does return ref_t.
Actually do.
But then so I think he buys into the scenario. He understands that we need another method similar to me. He didn't seem super excited about the name, but I also don't think he had like a massive problem with it either. Like, even on my side, it's not super like negative. It's just, I don't know. Like, I think ItemRef seems a bit too much of lingo, not much of a.
So the only difference is like ItemRef or ItemReference. That's what you. Those are the 2 reasonable proposals.
Is the closest one I can think of. I just don't like it. How long it is, I guess.
It's kind of long. Right.
I agree. Do we actually have the byref and those type of things already exposed in APIs? We do. But yeah, they actually match the byref as in like in the IL spec, so that's different slightly.
The new types like Span, they have indexers which are byref.
No. We have APIs aside from Span which already have byref in the name, especially in the metadata reader and those places.
Type is byref.
Yeah. But the byref is a term from IL, right? It's not. It's the term from there. So ref is not.
It's not abbreviation. It's abbreviated way before.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying we're using ref as the name.
But the argument is more that the byref is something that happens to be in IL instructions. The ref itself does not. It comes more from C#, not from IL. So that's the only difference. Small one.
Any objections to item by ref?
Item by what?
Item by ref. Well, I agree with that, but I don't know. Like, I don't think that necessarily ItemRef1 is super easy to read either. Like,
Well, it's the logical extension.
Yeah.
The indexers are item, and we're saying it's ref.
so ref item.
Ref item, fine. I don't object to that. Like, item by ref is just really...
ByRef is
Yeah.
it's not better than ItemRef, I think.
No, I used it more as an example that we already have the ByRef or kind of abbreviations inside API shape, so it would be not the first time. This is probably more exposed, so that's the only downside.
Yeah.
The things that we have are niche.
The thing is, we're forced to pick a name which is... I mean, it cannot be ideal because ideal names are already taken. There is an item and there is element add. They're both in use. And I do want to go through a list of types just to probe how far we can go with placing this.
So how about we put the naming on hold for now? I think like let's do this and like actually talk about the types that you would expose it on.
This is where like string. I just added string just for extreme case. I don't think it's needed on the string, but it is possible to put it on the string. I don't know why. Just because.
It's basically half of what slides would do, but yeah.
Yeah, because also we'll probably add the DangerousGetPinnableReference, whatever. This could be used for pinning on the string. If string has a ByRef indexer, you could use it in fixed statement. But string is...
Why this way?
It's a long story. The way fixed is implemented for string is very roundabout and convoluted. There is a special API which we call, and that is specifically because we cannot get to the element as a reference.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can for array, but we cannot for a string. So that's why this strange API exists, where like offset from the beginning something. And the moment you want to have any changes to the string, like let's separate it in two objects, or let's do UTF-8 or compression or something, you run into this hardwired requirement that the first character must start after the beginning of the object with that offset. These problems would not exist if we had an indexer which returns a reference. So like you could just get the reference to the first character, no matter where it is, and fix it. But that is solved by the other proposal, the dangerous pinnable something.
Yeah, we rename it to get reference.
So assuming that will exist, there is absolutely no value in adding this method to string. It's just in the list of the types, like it's too primitive to benefit.
Yeah. Plus it seems like kind of almost misusing, like the original intent seems to be slightly different, right?
Yeah,
to be able to modify things.
Well, it will definitely have a read-only reference indexer.
Yeah.
But then, like you're returning a character, char by ref, so like it's 4 bytes to return 2. So I think string is on the one extreme; it's too simple.
Yep.
Dictionary is probably on another extreme. That's too complicated. I could see a ByRef indexer on a dictionary. It will take the key and give you. It certainly can be implemented and probably can even be used, but feels it's a bit.
That's actually pretty useful.
What do you say about it?
How many times did I do that?
It's pretty straightforward on the implementation side.
I
And
think dictionary will maybe.
How many times, I've seen, in my code a couple of times that you need to kind of modify that, and so you have to kind of find out if it is, remove it, and so.
Then you do dictionary lookup twice.
yes.
Yeah. So that seems actually pretty useful.
Okay, then everything in
the
between.
example is, let's say v is an int. So you need to do this thing where you want to like
Well,
either add 0 or add 1.
if
Or
V is a
plus.
big struct, you're in a bigger trouble because you need to do lookup, copy this struct out of the dictionary, change something.
And then save it
Do
again.
Sure,
not-
like
do
it's,
not-
yeah, V is a large struct. It's true for other reasons. But like if you, I mean, usually the problem is if you need to add, if you be, hold again. No?
But I think all the types in between, they would basically just be just as useful. If you, I'm surprised you're okay with dictionary having such access.
So yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with dictionary returning a ref V because I think it is, like I've seen cases where it's somewhat useful to avoid dictionary lookups. I mean, the reason I think it's useful is because we added other methods to avoid the double lookup.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think this is getting rid of that problem. We can just say we only have one method now.
Item add will not work nice for a dictionary because it's not a ordered set. So like item add and you give a key. Maybe the key is not a position.
While you're talking about item at this moment, are you discussing the name
I'm just
or?
saying that it's not a reason why item add is not as good as an item ref. Item ref is more.
Let's table that discussion. So.
Okay.
No, we already tabled that, right?
But I think you raised a good point, which is like whatever name we pick, we have to make sure it makes sense for the majority of the time regarding of the bike shading discussion. Right?
Yeah.
Like it needs to be a name that
We can feed back to the bike shading. Like if we allow this on dictionary, then item add is probably not as good as item ref.
I view it that item add has one vote, and item ref and reference has like some votes.
People like item ref.
Yeah.
So
So this is yet another confirmation of the same thing. Yeah.
It's more neutral to what it is used for. Like it's just a reference. You use it for whatever.
Yep.
So I think dictionary is. I can't think of the reason why it wouldn't work. String builder seems also pretty straightforward.
People have reservations for cases where you can actually hold the reference. You can store it to a local, or I mean, you can actually do bad things. You can hold the reference and cause the dictionary or list or something to change, like.
True, but you have the same constraints as like ref flag types, right? So you can't really stash it away easily, right?
Yeah, and this is like completely up to you. It's you who is kind of doing the bad thing. It's more like don't mutate the list concurrently. It's the same problem.
Yes.
So bad things will happen. It's type safe, but it's completely unpredictable. So this is the same thing. Like you grab the reference and start adding elements to a list. That's probably not a good idea. Eventually it will resize and your reference will be pointing to the old thing, or start removing, then you're probably pointing to something which is beyond the range. It's still type safe.
Yeah, your ref is exactly as unstable as index would be, right? Like that's really the way to think about it.
Yes.
Which I think is something people can.
In reality, will not be a problem, I think. Because it's not something which will happen across layers of.
No, if you keep passing and returning refs to arbitrary data structures around your system, you're doing something really wrong. Like you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But also the type system makes it inconvenient enough that I don't think it will be a.
Yeah, it will be hard because refs are short-lived and hard to keep around. And essentially, it's the same problem. You have a list of objects and you have an object. You do this and that object is not in the list, but you still may think it is. So it is not a big problem. I initially was also kind of shocked, like, we allow that. Like, you can get in trouble, but then, like, why would you want to get it?
We should have probably warning at the item ref, like the same stuff we have in iterators, like don't change, the underlying data structure. Basically, the same holds for the item ref.
Yeah. Well,
whenever because you're either relying on the implementation that the thing is not going to go away, or you might get unlucky if you insert things or it's resized or stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I was going to say, we had that whole, like, what happens? Like, when we did this in Midori, we had the whole, like, oh my god, like, if we make list of T have a ref indexer, because we could change things, weren't bound. They're like, but then someone's going to take ref to the item, they're going to index, they're going to set it, and it's going to break expectations. We spent, I don't know, 3 weeks of people complaining that we were going to destroy the world and break everything, and there were threads and meetings, and then we checked it in, and there were 0 bugs.
Threats or threads?
Threads. I'm not going to say if the threads had threats. However, it was mostly around threads. But of all the consternation and hand wringing over this is going to be bad, it resulted in 0 bugs.
Yeah,
Again, there's zero code out there, so it's going to result in 0 bugs, right? Using this.
Midori had millions of lines.
No. I mean,
we had lots of crazy people.
But the point is that we need to. What I wanted to call out is that we should document it. That's all.
Yeah,
right?
no,
Because there are people who will get surprised. Like, dude, just read the freaking manual.
No, I agree with you, but
Would you put it on concurrent collection?
that one is trickier because of the inherent.
Because
That one is trickier, I think, because list is a type where if you're using it in a multi-threaded fashion, you're already broken unless you have taken the steps to protect it. Yeah. Whereas, like, the expectation is your list of T is being used in a single-threaded fashion, except if you have explicitly had a case where you are doing the proper locking and you have control
It's
over
up
it.
to the caller, basically.
Yeah, as opposed to concurrent.
the right access is try get.
And the problem with that one is intended to be used from multiple. That one feels a little more dicey.
Maybe that's where we have the limits, how far we can go with.
I would also say, like, I mean, really, as I said earlier, like with dictionaries, one common example is you wanna avoid the double lookup to do like an increment, for example, right? Which for concurrent dictionaries you wouldn't be able to do because you have to call the try, get, or update because you want the update to be atomic, right? And
Yes,
so like so there's no way to do this when you return a ref T. So that seems like literally you're steering people down.
And you get around of all the fencing and locking, and
Yes.
so like you're starting mutating thing in place, probably without any volatile or anything.
Yes.
So yeah, concurrent is probably where we definitely don't.
Especially when the T is actually instructed, you can write atomically. Now you're reading it and writing it.
Yeah, you have
like
tiering, all sorts of problems. Yeah, concurrent is where we don't go.
I think the questions are the other things that we have. We have sets. Do you care about sets? I think you probably don't use them in ReadOnly, which is why you haven't added.
Sets are weird. They don't have typically identity. So how do you index them? They normally have like
That's pretty good. At one point, you can't actually get anything.
contains or doesn't contain.
Actually, no, we have. Like, I'm not sure we did it on hash set or sorted set, but on the immutable ones, like Andrew added the the problem was they had somewhere in the project system they had a set of file paths and they wanted to get the actual casing out of it. So we added an API on set where you could basically like given some representation that would match, it would give you the actual instance back.
Then it becomes a dictionary of key. Then it's why not?
Yeah, basically that's what
Why not? The stack is interesting that that doesn't have an indexer, and generally you don't want to index the stack, but you pretty much always want ByRef access to the top.
Yeah, that one might be an exception to this whole idea of like getting this conversation out of the way one time, because stack and queues will be different.
Queues, I'm not sure you want to have
in
access.
stack you could say like, I mean, you wouldn't give ItemRef on stack, right?
Yeah,
you would have an index, you would maybe do peak ref, right?
Yeah, peak ref. Yeah, that's you want the ref to the
Top ref.
Right.
When I think any argument you make for stack, you can make for queues.
Tail ref.
Huh? No, you'd want the top. The next thing that's coming out. Like how many?
Last as well. They're just as special. Yeah. Anyways, I think for stack it's useful only for the top element, but it is just as useful as for others.
By the way, the indexer is actually on iList and iReadOnlyList and these things, these interfaces. So I don't expect that we want to add the ItemRef on interfaces.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, all queues not double-ended, so you would only have it would have the same API as on stack. You would have peak ref.
Yeah, those are the weird ones. They're the ones you can't do with ItemRef. Like they're.
So it seems fine. I mean, they don't have an indexer today, right? So they.
So the question is, do we want to add the method to the interfaces? And I think sometimes there will be no way of implementing it.
Well, we also can't.
We cannot change interfaces. Yeah.
We would have to introduce a new interface and derive from that and like that.
I'm just calling it out, like, we're,
And discussion is closed on that.
I wouldn't be shocked if it comes at, as a requirement in future or something.
Well, the funny thing is, even default implementation interface wouldn't help us because you can't implement them over the existing ones. Like, you literally fundamentally cannot implement them. Like, you have to go essentially. So, like,
In some cases, you can return computed results, which have no concept of location. So, and then how do you implement the ref thing?
And the read-only ones may be able to lie about it, but no, because you have to return something that actually exists. You can't return a ref.
And there will be expectation of identity, so if you call it twice, you'll get the same thing.
That's also true. So yeah, useful. So I think like that leads to me I don't think we have a single name. We would have a pattern that says take whatever thing you have, like an indexer of the name is item usually. For peak, it's peak, and you suffix it with ref. Right? That would be the pattern then, and that seems reasonable.
It's reasonable and short. Short is good.
And when you say arrayable, they really mean the builder and immutable, right?
Which one?
Like arrayable that we don't have that. I think you mean the one that is under the mutable array builder, right?
That one.
Yeah.
Because our stack is sitting on top of that. There is a practical desire to do that.
Do you want to edit that?
But it's the same as a list. It's just slightly faster, and it has this relationship with immutable array.
Yeah.
So I think if one, then why not another?
There, just edit this to make sure that we don't confuse the two.
I ordered them by the from simple to more complex. Yeah.
Oh, wait, screwed up the generics. Yeah, doesn't matter.
You did.
String builder, somebody said it could be useful.
Yep.
Again, it's just shuttling the char out and back. But
we don't need it for value tuple because they are fields, so you trivially have a ref out of it, right?
For what?
Like for value tuple, we wouldn't need it.
Value tuples,
fields, right? So
they're designed to be truly,
already by ref.
Can we actually
already by val.
Does it make sense actually to list things that we consider known?
That's probably a good idea.
Concurrent collection, string.
Yep.
So what's the argument against string? Besides it's just
Not very useful.
Not much useful.
The only useful thing, you could use it for pinning, but we have another solution for pinning.
Why is string interesting?
Not interesting. It's another extreme. It's too simple to benefit.
Oh yeah. The benefit of ref only basically it's ref is useful in a couple different places, particularly like holding onto a slot to add later, or also essentially the other one is rather than holding on a list and an index, you can hold onto a ref and use that as a place to insert. The other one is on immutable types. On immutable types, the value that ref provides is essentially avoiding copies to the stack.
Right.
Essentially, when I want to I have an immutable array of giant freaking struct, then I might want to say item at 0.name to just basically dig through a pointer instead of forcing a full copy to the stack. So when you think about it, is less than or equal to a pointer type, it's not worth it.
Yes, then a string is like.
You said one thing like adding to the list.
So for instance, there's.
Really? Yeah. Is it gonna be used there? Like, can we on the list of T? Can we hack that up? Like, doesn't
Absolutely. You can say get instead of in a case today we were if I want to do an insertion and today the only way you can do it is either pass a delegate or you pass a collection and an index and say insert at.
Yep.
And with ref and indexers, you just pass a ref to the location and say just assign here.
So we will have to add one more method on list.
No, item ref. It returns a ref. It's a ref returning method. You can take a ref of that value. So imagine
okay, I have a ref of the value, and what do I do with that? Sorry,
So imagine you said that I want to say dictionary.tryGet value of some key, comma, ref, list that item at ItemRef 0.
You're mixing up a dictionary now.
No, I'm saying like a try get value or try parse or something like that. Like today, I'm trying to explain like how fully this kind of goes through. Anywhere that you can have a ref parameter, you can just pass the result of ItemRef by ref. Because it's just the ref.
Yeah.
So
I can modify that stuff. I don't see how I can add actually, insert into, for example, list, because
Not insert, but modify in place.
modify in place.
Yeah.
I buy that. You
Yes.
said insert, and that's where I was like, okay, because there's like bigger data structure around that, which you don't know actually how to mess up with
You
that,
don't
right?
want
So
to.
you don't want to on top of that. Yes. Well, you may want to, but you should know. Tuple as no.
No, it's already.
Yeah, it's trivially a ref
exposed.
because it's a field.
Yeah, no, I mean,
As a field is a-
listed in the not very useful, but yeah, whatever. Discussed.
List of T is useful.
Yeah.
Immutable list, the same.
So what was the argument of Q? Q
Q is not in here, but it's kind of similar to stack.
Exactly. So it should
If
be
you have
there.
access to, if you can pick
Yeah.
at the head, why don't pick by ref?
Yeah.
Pick ref.
What about the sorted set is a
It
bad
looks like
idea.
we're not converging on the single name, but on the pattern. Whatever Q has for the head, you just add ref to it.
Yeah, sorted are bad idea, right? Because you should not mess up with the things.
But if it's sorted by the key, it's unproblematic.
Yeah, you'd probably get access to the value, not the key.
Yep.
I mean, that's why sets are a bad idea. But if you look at sorted dictionary, we could totally do it. Right?
So do we want to wait with that one for later, or we have the multi-value dictionary?
sorted set
Did we
is-
introduce that? When did
No, we have a preview that we never productized.
Oh, okay.
Mark the sets, especially sorted sets, as
Bad
no,
idea.
as bad idea.
Yeah, sorted set is absolutely bad idea.
Even regular set. What if I put a duplicate in there?
Sorted list and sorted dictionary might be okay, right?
Again, it's sorted
But-
by the key, not by the value.
Which means that we could
Right.
use that, right?
Yes.
But the question is it valuable? Like,
Basically, it's every data structure where the organization depends on the actual value. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you would have a sorted dictionary where the key is not a value but the key is a delegate, it would also be a bad idea because potentially let's say you have a sorted set of customer, but your key is the customer ID is a delegate. It's basically extracting that value.
Value,
If
yeah.
that ever changes your
Yep.
So every time you have that,
But whenever value is like independent, like yeah, sure, go crazy, right?
which seems generally positive. Do we need to add any other methods that deal return like refs? For example, I could think of like things like index off and other things that give you indices right now. You would basically have to then again index into that to get the actual ref out of it. Do we care?
Like
I could imagine on array, instead of having array.indexOf, we have indexOfRef that directly gives you back a ref t rather than the index.
and if it fails, it gives you.
Index out of range. For example.
How is that different from this one?
It's not. It's just it's the same argument, right? You basically don't like if you want to do that, you would have to call index off to get back an int, then you have to call the indexer equivalent that gives you back a ref.
That's
It's
a
just
better.
normal.
That's
I
a
mean,
better
there's
example
nothing wrong with
because
it. It's just do we care enough?
because index is typically used not to fetch the actual element. Most of the uses I see is for like let's truncate the thing.
Right.
It's actually for the integer, not for the value, because the value you have it. It's not as attractive, I think.
The reason I'm asking is primarily because should we think about the naming convention of whatever that thing ends up being. But if
You add a ref at the end.
if the only suffix of ref, yeah, that should generally always work anyway, so it may not be too bad. Alright, seems like we kind of have a winner here.
So we don't have explicit goal to put it on all the collections that we think it might be potentially useful. We just called out things, and over time we might add it to like, again, if there's need for sorted dictionary, sorted list and stuff.
Yeah,
just stating obvious.
I guess initially we'll put it on 5 or 6, which we think
are useful.
And then probably one by one it will.
Okay. So we're gonna start with this list, I assume. The one above.
Yes. Immutable arrays are like long-standing target for adding this. Because immutable array definitely should have read-only accessor.
Yeah, we need that hard. Like that's like we can track a number for issues down in Roslyn to like just need to stop copying all these structs everywhere, and basically our entire life devolves down into a mutable array and a mutable dictionary. And I believe we also have to change. Another one we should put up there is immutable array builder.
It already is there. Yeah. Immutable array builder.
Okay, sorry. The fact that the immutable arrays weren't grouped, the first two were grouped, and so every time I looked, I'm like, we only did those 2 immutable things? Why? Like, my mind can't read further down the list. But having the builders and the arrays have ItemRefs would significantly, like, there were a number of places where, like, yeah, we could significantly change our perf if we have this.
Future types could just have indexers, which are
right.
Returning, but again, this is not a desire.
That might be suddenly, mix up.
Actually,
not just mix up. Again, like you may be bound by interfaces you're implementing to have a by-val indexer, then you continue the practice. So like you create your own type, it implements iList that forces you into by-val indexer.
No, you can do an explicit and then
actually,
it's implementation always, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, the only downside, so when you talk about like, should I have a by-val indexer versus a by-ref indexer? By-ref indexers, except for one case, they allow for more uses than by-val ones. For instance, you can pass them by ref. You can take an indexer and pass it by ref. Also, you can dot through on mutable structs, and you can assign through to mutable structs. You can only do that with the by ref indexer. You can't do it with the by val indexer. The only downside is you can't call it via reflection.
We should fix that.
Yet.
Once these things become more popular, I'm sure the question will come up and we'll find a way.
Yeah, given that most of the cases are for performance and wavy, it's probably not showing up super quickly on the reflection radar, but
RefEmit?
RefEmit is kind of special, but yes.
This is really
special.
Some.
Sorry?
Why is RefEmit special?
Well, as in, like,
they're
not necessarily mutually exclusive, right?
And useful.
Versus regular reflection and performance are somewhat at odds with each other, right?
Currently, people get around these limitations by using unsafe endpointers. So, but yeah, it doesn't work well with reflection right now.
Right.
And it could. We didn't change anything.
Oh.
Sweet. So, and I guess like we already worked on the fact that both VB and F# will support it, or is it something that's just maybe not?
Ref returns are supported by F# and VB already. Ordinary ref returns.
Read-only refs are the ones that
Read-only is the new ones which are about to ship. After that, I think F# will be quick to support them. They're kind of fast. VB.
So VB had ref returns for like everest.
VB, no, that's the opposite. VB currently cannot declare ref returns, but can consume them. And
it sounds like a VB thing in general.
Yeah, and VB is such a language that refness was always an implicit thing, so it will be syntactically difficult to put ref returns in VB.
I see. Like they do support assigning to a ref return already?
Yeah, they fully support them. It's just you cannot declare your own. So like if you have abstract class with ref returning thing, then good luck using that in VB.
You can override it essentially.
You cannot override it. But you could use it. You could call it and assign through it. It understands it. Byref variable is not new to VB. It knows about Byref parameters. The returns are not that much different when you are using them.
Right. Alright. Then I think that's all fine. And we'll prove this thing and then happy hacking. So who's on the hook for adding those members? Is that something that you guys are doing, or?
I'd like to do it unless like Tobe will do it faster. He's like often like, well, you're thinking to do something, and here is already PR. So.
Give him rest the PR with the changes. You just approved it.
Yeah, it's already out.
Okay, you're 10 seconds late. Okay. Yeah, we should do it across the board. I think like should probably start with the high value ones, but it's always nice if you have things in tandem. Sweet. All right. Oops. That was. What? No, I don't want to transfer the call.
Sure about that?
Moderately. So I think we almost approved everything, but
Yep, there's one, this color Intel hardware intrinsics. I'm not sure if...
yeah, that doesn't end well.
Yeah, and I think we will need tenor in here.
Yes. And this one we created, so that doesn't count. All right, so
Yep.
down to 1. Alrighty, guys. Thanks to the people online.
Thank you, Mo.
Thanks.